Hey, what's up? This is Ross, and this is another movie review. And because tomorrow is going to be the release of the brand new Robocop remake, I have decided to take on the original masterpiece 1987 film, Robocop. And, sorry I had it upside down there, but Robocop. So, what we have here is, in 1984, James Cameron released The Terminator, which was was a groundbreaking movie that basically opened a lot of doors for the cybernetic movie genre, and then, of course, a couple years later, you had another big one, which was made by a man named Paul Verhoeven, and that was called Robocop. It starred action legend and jazz maestro, his history teacher. If you don't know by now, he's a history teacher as well, Peter Weller. And what set Robocop apart from the Terminator was the fact that Robocop dealt with more human scenarios with the mix of machine and man. So that's what made Robocop a lot different than its predecessor, the Terminator, is that the cyborg in the Terminator was a machine that was only able to focus on one thing, whereas Robocop is actually still has some of his human traits left over, which is the one thing in Robocop that is probably the coolest thing out of the whole entire movie, is that it focuses and centers on that at times, that Alex Murphy is basically still dealt with having the memories left over in his brain after his absolutely brutal death, which is still one of the most amazing and incredible death scenes in Hollywood history. I mean, the destruction of Alex Murphy is probably one of my, and I don't mean to sound morbid about this, but it's probably one of my favorite death scenes out of any movie I have ever seen. It's on my top 10. It's on my top 5 of all the death scenes in any movie that I've ever seen. Is that the destruction of Alex Murphy? I mean, that scene where he gets shot, like, oh my God, it must be at least 50 times where he gets shot. It's just his body is basically pulverized into basically almost nothing. And in the movie, they could only salvage his face and part of his brain, and that's about it. And what we have in that is we have Paul Verhoeven playing with the fact that when Alex Murphy is traumatized by his memories of his wife and his family, he is basically... They program him to become a street enforcer. They program him to enforce the law, but he does it first. But instead of that, then he becomes enamored into trying to go after the people that destroyed the criminals that destroyed his life, and that comes from notorious criminal in the movie, Clarence Boddicker, that is mainly Robocop's target in the movie. That let's just put it this way: he wants him bad. He wants to destroy him. He wants revenge in the way that, not in the way that normal humans would go, but he slowly wants to destroy everything that this man has built up, his drug empire, everything that this man has built up. But what we get instead is a giant conglomerate of OCP trying to stop Robocop because they were the ones that seemingly created Robocop into becoming a street law enforcer, but they didn't intend on him becoming to even contemplate anything as such a human action as revenge. They didn't contemplate that whatsoever. The vice president is mad. He's pissed. You know, he doesn't want anything to do with Robocop. He wants to take him down, and he wants Clarence Boddicker to help him with that. And what we get is this showdown between Robocop and Clarence Boddicker that comes to a boil at the end. And we get the vice president's machine to counterattack Robocop, which also makes an appearance in the remake Ed 209, which is an enforcing droid that is much more inferior than Robocop, but then again, he is much more battle-weary and battle-tested, and is more military. Think of a walking tank. That's exactly what Ed 209 is. Now, what makes this movie so amazing is the fact that they play on, kind of like what YouTube does today and the mass media does today. They play with that in the movie in ways that we've never seen before in the 80s. I don't think I quite ever saw anything like Robocop as far as what it played to the media. It just almost makes fun of the fact that humans are so drawn towards the media. And that's what makes Robocop so different than any other cyborg movie, is that Robocop plays that. And Alex Murphy is basically transported into a world that is basically controlled by a conglomerate that is almost attached to basically everything in Detroit City, in fact, worldwide. And what we have is a president that is losing power to the vice president because he no longer has control of his company. The vice president does. Now, the vice president is played by infamous guy who can play bad guys to a hilt, Ronnie Cox. And he is just absolutely ruthless. He's just as ruthless as Clarence Boddicker. And he's absolutely just an extraordinary performance from Ronnie Cox. Incredibly. You just love to hate this guy. All right. And there's also another amazing cast, you know, and it's just an absolutely glorious movie where, you know, and the violence is basically, the violence is not just mindless violence. The violence is actually a character in the movie to the point where the violence takes on a different form, a different shape, to the point where it is the character that is trying to be stopped in the movie. Or sometimes it even takes over the characters in the movie. For instance, Robocop is forced to basically do acts that really he never was intended to do. He wasn't just intended to become a street enforcer, not bent on revenge and do acts of violence towards revenge. That wasn't what Robocop was designed to do. But he is designed to stop whatever thing is on the streets, or whatever person is on the streets that is trying to destroy people's way of life. That is what Robocop's job is. So we get an incredible, amazing performance from Peter Weller that you wouldn't even think would be an amazing performance, being that he's playing in a cyborg. I think he should have been up for an Academy Award for the movie. He was absolutely amazing, trying to portray this wounded man that was basically the unfortunate, Behringer of this experiment that basically was put on no choice for him at all. He didn't have any choice, any words, or any voice into it at all. And he still doesn't, even when he's put into this experiment, which is another thing that is good about Robocop 2. Now, I'm not saying that the remake will not have its good parts, but it could never, ever, ever measure up to Robocop, the original, because Peter Weller's performance is absolutely spectacular. It just is an amazing movie. They always say that you can't recreate a masterpiece once it's done. That reigns true for Robocop. And I have to cut this short. Thank you for watching. If you go out, see it, let me know how it is, because I'm still up in arms of whether I want to go see it or not. Thanks for watching this. Please subscribe to my videos if you like them. Thank you very much.